The Assembly member wants to ensure that the areas most affected by the construction of the power plant receive relief as established by the legislation. And while he appreciates the enthusiasm he has seen from the advocates of the parkway and supports the intent of the project, which is to unify the Coachella Valley as one, there are still many factors he feels that need to be considered. The price tag on the parkway is high, estimated at $80 million, yet its financial feasibility is yet unclear. Additional questions exist regarding the feasibility of obtaining the adequate permits, the ability of crossing through private land, and so he feels that a commitment to allocate more than 50% of the mitigation dollars to a concept that has many unknowns and whose public health benefits are difficult to quantify is a bit premature. On the other hand, what is more certain is that the impact resulting from the power plant on air quality will affect everyone, from Palm Springs to the Salton Sea. We already have communities that are disproportionately affected by environmental and health problems. Seniors, children, and the disabled are the most vulnerable. For these reasons, the Assembly member wants to ensure that communities have the ability to prioritize and to decide how the money should be used. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, members of this committee. Thank you for speaking publicly. I'm here to speak on behalf of the AB 1318. We've been working around this issue. I find this is a valuable opportunity to invest in some of the outstanding air quality issues that are creating some, I would say, health hazards. In this case, exceedances in particulate matter in the Coachella Valley. Sometimes it's really difficult to come across resources that help some of the major sources of air pollution. I'm pleased to see a lot of the documentation, particularly AQMD, that's put out there the air pollution emissions inventory that have very descriptively signaled out the areas that have major concerns. Some of the things that come to mind are unpaved roads, open lands, unpaved parking lots, a number of other things that they have pointed out there. So I'd really like to see that this money does go to help reduce air pollution at the source. And furthermore, I'm also pleased to see that this legislation is pretty prescriptive, giving 30% to the diameter of the nearest location, 30% environmental justice communities, and 40% hopefully that can be reinvested in this community as well to offset mitigation funds. One of the things that I always like to put forth is there's many types of funding out there. There's funding for economic development, there's funding for job development, and then there's funding for mitigation to offset air pollution that's being created in one place, to offset it somewhere else where there's some significant problems. And if you stick to those principles, then you end up tending to reduce air pollution in some of the most concerning areas or underdeveloped areas. The other thing is also I'd like to bring forth to this committee is that the importance of as you hear more of this AB 1318, and you hear different proposals and different ideas, I'm glad to hear that we're at a starting point. And I've heard that from numerous interested stakeholders, but also as representatives of your cities, of the different governments. I think it's also important to go back to your city councils, or to your respective governments, or whether it's native governments, and present this to your council, to your colleagues, and see how it is that this issue of AB 1318 can move forward, so that there is consensus, because at the end of the day, we have to support a good model of investment in reductions of air pollution, and hopefully take a good plan to AQMD when this is considered. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And I think the third part of this is best addressed, frankly, by our supervisor, John Benoit, and that's to discuss the Sentinel Air Quality Mitigation Program. On the first part, the staff report, I briefly mentioned our efforts to secure a $200,000 grant from the California Energy Commission The executive committee approved us moving forward with that in December. We haven't heard back from the Energy Commission yet, but the PEV, or Plug-in Electric Vehicle Grant, would be somewhat related to the Parkway concept because, of course, there's an electric vehicle component to the Parkway, but it is a standalone grant application and one that I think we're well positioned to get through the CEC. Second part is just really an introduction to LeGrand Velez. The executive committee in December authorized staff to take steps to evaluate the Parkway concept. You all have received most of you all have received an overview of what we're talking about with the Parkway and integrating neighborhood electric vehicles. As you know, we still had a number of questions about the concept, particularly how do you integrate neighborhood electric vehicles into what was already planned to be a bicycle pedestrian corridor. And staff issued an RFP, got a couple of proposals in, and selected LSA and Associates along with RBF and Alta Planning to do a feasibility or an evaluation of the concept. And so LeGrand Velez is here to let you know if we have fatal flaws. LeGrand.
Thank you, Mr. Velez. Good afternoon. Greetings. As Tom said, my name is LeGrand Velez. I'm an employee with LSA Associates, a planning environmental consulting firm with an office in Palm Springs. That's where I work and also live. And many of you may know me in my role as a lobbyist for the Coachella Valley Community Trails Alliance. That's a grassroots group that lobbies for bike lanes and bike trails throughout the valley. But today I'm not wearing that hat. I'm strictly wearing my consultant planner hat. So we've been working on this what we're calling the Whitewater River Parkway Preliminary Study Report. And it's not final yet, but it's very close to final, so that should be available soon. This report, the study we're doing builds upon a previous report that was completed in 2009, funded by the Riverside County Open Space and Park District and by the Desert Recreation District. This plan looked at 3 potential corridors in the valley: the Whitewater, Dillon Road, and the All-American Canal. For the work we're doing, we're taking the work that was done on the Whitewater study and looking if it could, how it could be adapted for this new vision of not just a place for bicyclists and pedestrians, but also for neighborhood electric vehicles and golf carts. The conceptual alignment that we're working with is approximately 76 miles, though the heart of the project is more of a 54 miles. What that consists of is the main trunk line along the Whitewater River that would extend all the way from Palm Springs, approximately Chino Wash and 111, to along the Whitewater to Avenue 56 in Coachella. We're also looking at, as a core part of the project, a connector to Desert Hot Springs, which would connect beginning at Gene Autry, running along Gene Autry to cross over, go north and cross over the freeway and the railroad tracks. Shortly after getting north of I-10, it goes through a golf course. What's the name of it?
Desert Dunes.
Desert Dunes, and then follows the Verbena Wash up to near to the Cabot Museum, and then it would go back on roads to the Cabot Museum. And that's an alignment that was researched and promoted by the Desert Hot Springs community. Another connector we'd like to propose, because it would be easier to do, is the existing path along Cockwitz Creek in Palm Springs. This runs from just east of Palm Canyon, along Cockwitz Creek, through a couple of golf courses to the Whitewater Wash. It connects with the Whitewater Wash just east of Golf Club Drive and Cathedral Canyon Golf Course. It's an existing Class 1 path, and we're proposing to, about 5 miles, and proposing to upgrade that so it could also accommodate golf carts and electric vehicles. So there's those 2 connectors. In addition, in order to make sure that the path is clearly integrated with the areas it passes through, because that is a problem with many Class 1 paths, as they kind of pass through an area without clear connections. We're proposing a number of connector loops that would clearly connect the path to destination points. The three that are on the plate right now are the River Complex, Retail Entertainment Complex, the College of the Desert main campus, which is just a short ways off the river, and the La Quinta High School, which is actually right on the Whitewater River, but it's on the north bank. Well, the path would be on the south bank, so we also want to make a clear connection with that high school since it is right on the river. There could be other connection loops in the future. Some that have been suggested would be the Indian Wells Tennis Garden, as well as the Fantasy Springs and 29 and Spotlight 29 Casino in Indio and Coachella. That's sort of the heart of the project, but in addition, we've researched a proposal to do an extension to the Salton Sea that would take it from Avenue 56 along the Whitewater, terminating at the Desert Cuyo wetlands, and also now home to the Salton Sea History Museum. They have plans there to create the Nature and Interpretive Center in the future, so that would make a perfect destination point, as well as a connector path from that section, beginning at Avenue 66, through Mecca, following Hammond Avenue and Avenue 60, through North Shore, terminating at the North Shore Yacht Club Community Center. So that's the big picture that we're working through. In reviewing not all of these sections were included in the Whitewater study done by the Danger Group in 2009. Some of these are new areas. Certainly all the areas that are not on the Whitewater are new proposals. We've also proposed shifting some of the alignments proposed in the Dangerman study that we felt this made more sense through an alternate alignment. And I probably should have put this up first before I went through all that, but this is a map of what I just walked you through, showing the connectors to Desert Hot Springs and Tocklets Creek. What's identified on this map is some phasing information. This is certainly preliminary. These areas are identified based on the fact that there's fewer obstacles and that they're critical connections. You'll see the eastern and western legs are proposed for more likely earlier implementation. That is because the mid-valley is going to be the trickiest section developed due to the existing development that has occurred along the Whitewater, particularly with golf courses and country clubs that are adjacent to and sometimes even within the Whitewater. The alignment we're looking at, in some cases, we try to stay on the Whitewater bank as much as possible, but in some cases, for example, the Thunderbird golf course would be very challenging to get through, particularly because the fairways in that golf course are perpendicular to the course of the Whitewater as opposed to parallel. So in that case, and this may have to occur at other locations as well, but in that case, the alignment is proposed to exit the Whitewater Country Club, go along Highway 111, and return to the Whitewater just west of the Rancho Mirage Library. There's an existing pathway, pedestrian bike path on the south side of 111 there, and the proposal is to upgrade that to be a corridor for neighborhood electric vehicles, bicycles, and pedestrians. And if there's any questions about go on, please interject. So a key component of the work we're doing was to look at, are there any fatal flaws to what is being proposed? And the conclusion from our study is that no, there are none. The difference between a bike path and an NEV path basically is 2 feet of asphalt. A typical bike pathway is 12 feet wide. A typical two-way NEV pathway is 14 foot wide. Certainly in areas where there's more room, you might want to expand that, particularly if you're expecting high volumes of use just to improve safety. But the biggest challenges we'll be facing are crossing drainages and arterials, available right-of-way easements, and the Coachella Valley Water District and the Riverside County Flood Control District manage the managing agencies for the entire length of the Whitewater. The vast majority managed by the Coachella Valley Water District. They are a partner in this proposal. They're fully supportive of it. In fact, they have already begun doing research to clarify the right-of-way easements and ownership along the Whitewater to help with this process. Golf courses, that will be a challenge, but certainly the fact that the proposal is to allow golf carts on this path, we're hopeful that many of the golf courses will see that it's as a complement to their existing facilities. Another challenge will be access control. How do you keep motorized vehicles, particularly say motorcycles, from using this path? There's a few options for that. A lot of it has to do with controlling speed through the use of speed bumps. Another option would be an access gate control that would be with an inexpensive form of access, such as used at toll roads. This is a challenge for any Class 1 bikeway, so it's not new ground. As part of this research, we've done some preliminary cross sections to look at. This would be what would be the most typical cross section, which is a restricted right-of-way. Most of the bank of the Whitewater is between 15 and 25 feet wide. That's not a lot of right-of-way. However, it is sufficient to provide a paved path that's 12 to 14 feet wide. In addition, the idea we're working with now is to have an adjacent soft surface path for pedestrians and hikers. This would be on the shoulder there. And in a narrow right-of-way like this is actually a photo taken on the wash just north of Dinah's Shore, and we posed on that. At this particular location, the drop-off to the Whitewater is not very steep, and it's not very far. In areas where the slope is very steep, or has a distance, say, of change in elevation of 20 feet or more, we'll probably want to include a safety railing along there to give people a sense of security of not dropping off an edge for a great distance. This is more of an optimum parkway design where we have a very broad right-of-way. In this case, we have more landscaping and a wider vegetative buffer between the pedestrian hiking path and the bicycle NEV golf cart path. And this is an example of what's called Class 2 path, which is when it's actually on the roadway. Here you see that there's a combined lane for bikes and NEVs. As you see, that would be 7 to 8 feet wide, and in addition, there would be a sidewalk space for the pedestrians. Preliminary cost estimate is about $80 million. Could be more depending on how many components we want to include in this. I'd like to point out that that's a very conservative estimate. You don't want to come in below budget on this. It includes a 25% contingency budget, so that's $16 million alone. That is set aside for unforeseen things and cost overruns. In addition, this includes $4.5 million for 9 charging stations. I have confidence from what I've seen so far that it could be built for at least the main portion of the project for $80 million or less, and that's why we put in that big contingency fund. And there are plenty of sources for funding on this. Everybody's been talking about AB 1318 because that's a possible source that could be a large chunk that could really get this project started. However, a project like of this magnitude, it would be a first of its kind. NEV paths, NEV plans are not new. Many cities, particularly in California, have them. However, one of this magnitude has never been done. I think that would generate a lot of attention and a lot of support. It would be federal dollars, which of course always come with strings, so there's a benefit to avoiding those. But even the Riverside County Parks and Open Space District has already committed funding in support of this. And as I've said, CVWD is already investing staff time in support of this. So it's a project that's getting people excited because it's a grand vision. It would be something that would not be of a time-limited benefit. It would be something that would transform this valley by creating an alternative to Highway 111 to get through the valley, as well as have benefits for many generations to come. I would just like to add that there are many benefits that would come from this project. The air quality benefits are not questionable; they're very clear. Analysis has been done on say the impacts from an automobile versus an NEV or a golf cart. And it's been determined through the studies done so far that NEVs are a very cost-effective way to get air quality benefits. In addition, there's environmental justice aspects to this as well. A golf cart or NEV is a third to a fifth of the cost of an automobile. So people who cannot afford an automobile would possibly be able to afford one of these small electric vehicles. It's also a very good option for senior citizens who no longer feel comfortable driving an automobile. Many senior citizens would feel comfortable driving a lower speed vehicle, particularly along a designated corridor off of main roads. And this would enable to lengthen the years of independence for senior citizens. And in fact, most of the areas where NEV plans have been proposed and implemented are areas where there's a high senior citizen population. And then, aside from the whole NEV aspect, bicycles. It's been demonstrated that if you build the facilities and let people know they're there, the number of people using bicycles will increase tremendously. There was an article recently in, I think I got it on the Huffington Post. There was a study that was done in Minneapolis where they actually did bicycle counts over the last few years. In Minneapolis, which is ranked as the #1 cycling city for bicycling in the country, that when they did a marketing program and information to people as well as upgrading their trails, their bicycle ridership increased tremendously, even in the winter, which I can't imagine. Yes. Although I used to live in Flagstaff and I rode my bike there too. When the need calls, you can still do it, even in the freezing cold. So, like I said, the preliminary findings are very favorable, and we're close to wrapping up this initial study, and then it lays out, the study includes recommendations for steps to move forward with the process, and hopefully that will occur. Any questions?
Is there any questions? Ms. Park?
Yeah, this is just something that just came into my head. Initially, I thought that this was also to include equestrian riders, and no, this is not to include equestrian.
Just to clarify, the 2009 study by Dangerman did include a trail on one side for bikes, and the other side would be equestrian. We're not proposing equestrian as a part of a project that's more designed for transportation, potentially air quality funds, perhaps transportation funds.
All recreational.
Yeah, the recreational aspect of this is perhaps separate funding.
I'm just curious. I don't own a horse, so I don't ride a horse.
Notably, Mayor,
just curious.
I apologize. This, of course, wouldn't preclude an equestrian trail on the other side. In fact, it may facilitate that one day.
Mr. Lang? Yeah, I noticed in your study
that you treat drainage. The question that I have is, what is your approach in your study, if any, relative to flooding?
Flooding?
Flooding.
Right, well, most of the trails proposed to be at the top of the bank of the Whitewater. In some areas, particularly for crossings, when, say, for example, if an arterial doesn't have sufficient space above the bank for a path, in that case, we probably have to build a raised lower tier to go through to get under the arterial. The issue with flooding is, would have to, of course, any, say, encroachment into a designated 100-year floodplain would need to be approved by the FEMA flood control district. Our perspective on it, we did not look into that issue in depth in this study, but from traveling the Whitewater, looking around, we believe it is certainly manageable. I don't think anybody's seen a flood along the Whitewater that has reached the top of the banks for quite some time. In fact, it rarely raises more. When it does go bank to bank, it rarely raises more than a few feet. And in addition, if you look at the existing golf courses within the floodway, they seem to be able to manage just fine, preserving their facilities in that floodplain.
One comment, Council Member, on that, really two, is, and it's been a subject in the Transportation Committee, how CVWD has been extra conservative on building these bridges. And some engineers don't like that because it drives up the cost on the bridges. For purposes of the trail, it's been very helpful because there generally is plenty of freeboard, extra space between the bottom of a bridge and the embankments, and certainly the bottom of the Whitewater River. Second perspective, just reinforce what LeGrand said about the existing golf courses. I suspect we're being too conservative. We're trying to keep this trail up and out of the potential flood area. When you go to Rancho Las Palmas or Indian Wells, particularly Rancho Las Palmas and some of the courses in Rancho Mirage, they've got streets, golf cart paths, and everything else at the bottom of the Whitewater River, and it appears that they don't have to redo those every time there's water in the river. They obviously have some cleanup to do with debris, but the facilities themselves seem to be in pretty good shape, along with part of the trail in Rancho Mirage. And by the way, we keep talking about a new trail. Part of the trail already exists. It may not be in the best of repair, but it does dip down into the Whitewater River and crosses the river, and it appears to be in reasonably good shape there.
Now, the concern that I can share with you, and it's a very limited experience, I've only been here 14 years, but inside of Indian Wells, there's a radical change in the direction of the wash, as we call it. And what we've experienced is that we've lost major segments of the gravel, the dirt, and everything along the coast. When it comes in, it gets down as it goes into La Quinta. It does a radical right-hand turn, and there's been an awful lot of nightmare in trying to even use some of that land for building, and restrictions that the Coachella Valley Water District has put on it. So it's a tricky area.
You know, and my apologies to you and our representative from La Quinta and our newest representative from Blythe. You haven't been privy to some of the conversations in the last couple of months on this. I have had conversations with Miles Crossing project officials, and there's an interest in linking up, frankly, what we were thinking with what they were thinking. As you know, they were thinking about connections along the embankment there.
Thank you.
And actually, where I got my first experience building trails was in Tucson, Arizona. I used to work for the Pima County Parks and Recreation Department. And the tremendous land loss that occurred during some large flooding events in the 70s was the motivation that brought an Army Corps engineer to kind of secure the banks and build the trails. So if there is a problem with erosion, clearly it needs to be dealt with. And when it is dealt with, that's an opportunity to put it. It creates an opportunity to create a bank for a trail.
And CDWD seems to be a partner. They research the historical perspective of the banks and where they have failures and those types of things. I think that would cover the analysis. Thank you, Mr. Lutz.
Thank you.
I think we move on to Supervisor Benoit for the last segment.
Thank you very much, and I'll try to be brief. You've heard a good presentation on the research that's being done about one important idea on how we can spend some of AB 1318 in the Sentinel funds. It is obviously something that I think is value, or I wouldn't be here discussing it, that we wouldn't have had it come before us. But there are clearly some other priorities that need to be addressed also. So moving forward, I want to keep an open mind and have everybody understand the only thing that happens with Sentinel funding. We have to address, first of all, the law. And now I say we, I mean the A2MD. And the law clearly says that it has to be, anything you do with this money has to be spent for air quality improvement. Secondly, and subject to that first caveat, the law says that 30% of the money will be spent in proximity to the plant. We will comply with that, have to, want to. From that point on, it gets a little less clear. It says 30% will be used in environmental justice areas. There was none in the Coachella Valley when the bill was drafted. I have worked very hard to push A2MD, and we've now got, I believe, a pretty good definition for environmental justice in the valley. It's primarily southeast. It's based on poverty levels and air quality. But it's certainly broad enough to allow for the needs of the valley to be addressed from the environmental justice area. And then there's the 40% that is not identified in the law as far as where it will be spent. And frankly, that was Tom's biggest concern, and I shared the concern, although I had, I think, a stronger feeling that we could work out something that would make sure that money gets spent here. This path was part of that process, to kind of come up with an idea to make sure that the money can be all spent in the Coachella Valley. And it will be up to me to carry the message, and I hope is a unified one from this valley, that money should be spent here. This area accepted this power plant. It's an 800 megawatt power plant. You don't find those being built in California very often, and not many recently. I don't know, Kathy, when was the last one of those? You know, I mean, it's hard to stretch the memory. Yet, Riverside County and our neighbor, Desert Hot Springs, the closest neighbor, agreed to do that. Part of the reason was, and part of the offset is, that there's a mitigation fund. The idea that that portion of that money should be spent in near the harbors of LA or anywhere other than the Coachella Valley is a problem for me, and I'm going to make a strong case that it should be spent here. To do that, it would be helpful to be able to point to an important valley-wide project like this as a part of that project mix. So we are working to try and get a proposal, or a number of proposals, to the A2MD, which is anxious to identify where this money is going to be spent. They are the recipients, they are the arbitrators, they hold the money right now. They are not ready yet to disperse any money because there's still some pending legal issues that they're not quite comfortable that the check should be written yet. But there will be a time, and we think it'll be relatively soon, when they can disperse some of the funds. And so the question now is, how do you spend the money? And I'm told, I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but I think there's a draft of a request for proposals that will be out in the next day or so, if it is not already, from the Air Quality Management District. And I suspect that one of the proposals will be this path. We've had a number of public meetings, one in Desert Hot Springs, one in Mecca. We plan on having further. There was another one a couple nights ago down in Mecca again, I believe. Coachella. We will continue having those discussions locally, and out of those, clearly there are other high priorities. We will see a significant amount of paving of dirt roads in and around private trailer parks, and maybe some agriculture areas, and maybe some, I think there'll be at least one or two proposals from other industries that have huge areas that are currently being driven on in high volume by traffic that kicks up a lot of PM10. That's a very valid use of this funding. We have heard serious concerns, and we believe that there's a way within the air quality component of this to provide some transportation, perhaps from the North Shore area to link with existing public transit, to thereby reduce the number of private vehicle miles traveled in the southeast end of the valley, and create an air pollution benefit while also creating a benefit for that very needy community. We intend to offer and look for opportunities to help in the ag area with paving, with potential of changing out diesel pumps for water to electric where possible, saving a tremendous amount of diesel-generated PM10 in some of our agricultural areas, as well as dust control. These and another half dozen priorities have been talked about. All of them will be, I believe, addressed in the request for proposals. The question that remains, and I know Assemblyman Perez's staff today made some comments that highlight some of these concerns. The question is the balance, and how much should of this money should go to those things, and how much should go to the path. I think we can address a lot of good air quality priorities besides the path, and still have a significant down payment, which is what's always been lacking in getting this kind of a project going out of these funds. And so we'll have to wait to see what that balance is. You know, the 4.5 million out of that 80 million that was identified as charging stations. AQMD, when they first heard about this proposal, said, well, we think we might be able to fund those out of another pot of air quality money. You start looking at it, and I think that we can get to the number, but we've always lacked the down payment. And this has got huge potentials, not just for, and I've heard some people characterize it, why would I be supportive of this? I don't own an electric car. I can't afford a neighborhood electric vehicle. This path will be of value to anybody who has a pair of tennis shoes or a bicycle, and from any part of the valley. And the health industries in this valley have already expressed concern and a willingness to talk about being a part of the funding because of obesity and because of diabetic concerns in our communities, particularly our Eastern Valley communities, that will all be helped by having this opportunity for a healthy alternative for transportation. And as far as air quality goes, all these other projects will certainly improve air quality. 75 or 100 years of opportunity for people to drive an electric vehicle or a bicycle to work will have a long-term, huge, lasting impact on air quality in this valley. And finally, I think it's important that we recognize that this project, not only does it allow us to have a plausible way to spend the money in the Coachella Valley, but the money will create jobs in the Coachella Valley. We're not going to be spending all of the money buying school buses made someplace else. So there, frankly, we did a survey, and there's only about 13 school buses left that are the old style that would fit the quality, air quality improvement portion that AQMD typically funds anyway. But if you buy that school bus, it's made someplace else. If you buy this path, it'll be local engineers and local contractors and local union employees who will be working on that path. So we'll have a long-term and short-term job, because once the path is built, some of the tourism potential will continue to create those opportunities in this valley for a long, long time. So I'm personally very, very supportive of the other priorities. We need to include those, but I also want to see that we have a valley supportive of this idea of an iconic contribution to our valley out of this power plant mitigation fund. And it'll be at the AQMD board's discretion, and I will be there, and I will represent both sides. I mean, both are important priorities. I'd be happy to answer any questions if anybody has any. I don't want to take any more time than that to discuss where we're at. I think some of you have heard this story a few times now.
When do we think this may be going to a vote?
The request for proposals, and as well as, I believe, the EJ definition and the definition close to the plant, I believe will be on the February 3rd agenda. It is in draft now. It'll go to a committee between now and then, and then come to the AQMD board. That'll start the process and allow for people to put proposals in. Mr. Kirk and I have talked about jointly helping to create some local opportunities for workshops on how to put a proposal together. And we would hope that we come together as a valley and get behind many of these proposals. And we'll be talking about how to do that in the period of time after the RFP is on the street, before the final deadline. But we would also be willing to help anybody who would like assistance in putting their idea in the proper format and submitting it, if they wish, directly to the AQMD. There's many steps. That process will really begin probably after the February 3rd board meeting, and it takes a couple of months at least to get proposals back to AQMD, and then there'll be an approval, the evaluation process, standard process at AQMD.
So maybe by our April meeting, we'll know.
I think they'll be optimistic, but optimistically, April or May, we would hopefully have an idea what proposals were submitted, which ones were evaluated, and how they were prioritized.
Because the other project that you spoke of to be included in addition to would also create jobs here, and that's a huge advantage.
Which one?
The paving, for example.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The spending there would be spent here, as opposed to some ideas where you may buy the product someplace else and install it here, but this is definitely spending here, as well as paving in neighborhoods and that sort of thing too. If we, and I expect fully there'll be a huge piece of this. We'll be paving dirt roads leading to some of our residential areas that don't have paved roads coming in right now.
Very good job, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. CVAG Transportation gave authority to Mr. Kirk and Mr. Benoit to make a presentation to executive on our behalf, and executive will be taking this up to move it forward. So, thank you.
I do have some comments, Mr. Chair, if I may, on the city of Coachella, and I think it's important for me to communicate our position and express where we're at as it relates to this issue, this body. And I think I wouldn't be serving my constituency well in expressing some of the concerns, and I've had discussions with Mr. Benoit on this issue, and this pertains to the 30% environmental justice dollars that are being proposed for the trail. And although we are not against the trail, I think the trail is a grand idea that potentially can have long-lasting benefits for the Coachella Valley. What we are concerned with is a prioritization of those dollars to the trail as opposed to other projects that have a direct impact in mitigating some of the air quality issues that we have in our communities. We are already plagued by multiple issues. As you know, we are a low-income community, a community of color, a community that has high unemployment rates, has a lack of access to health services, lack of access to food security, and now we have this environmental issues. And I think it was brought up during the public comments of how we are disproportionately exposed to a lot of environmental issues out in that region. And we can list the Western environment issue, the dump issues out there, the amount of dilapidated housing. And although I do appreciate the effort to address some of those concerns by paving some of the roads, I think another thing that we can do that I haven't heard yet was there is prevalence of dilapidated substandard housing that can use weatherization. So, and these concerns were also expressed at the hearings that were conducted through AKMD and Desert Hot Springs in Coachella through my colleague at those meetings, and projects that have more direct impact on reducing the energy consumption that are going to minimize the power plant operating time, that are going to then minimize the pollutants that are going to go up to the air. And so for me, those are major concerns, and the city of Coachella's position, given all those issues that we face in that community, is that we want to see some of those dollars being prioritized to some of the issues that directly impact the person. Although I understand the long-term benefits of the trail in reducing PM10, I think there are some more pressing issues that we face in our community, and I think it's very important for me to express that to this body as I have to Supervisor John Benoit. And I think in moving forward, I hope that this body is cognizant of those issues, that understands the multi-variable elements that we are plagued by, and that we can use some of those dollars to directly improve those conditions by doing weatherization programs, by paving roads. We have dilapidated housing that can be weatherized, and so on and so forth. And we have a list of projects in the city of Coachella, submitted a list of projects as well. And given my ties and connections to the rural parts of Mecca in that area where my parents came as farm workers and met and married, those communities are very equally important to me as well. And so we're moving forward and talking about how we are going to spend this 30% of the environmental justice dollars. I think it's very important that we are cognizant of the disproportionate environmental issues that we face out there. and that we are able to address some of those issues with the environmental justice dollars that are available through AB 1318. And so I think it's very important to make this body aware of those concerns on behalf of the city of Coachella, and me personally also, not only as a representative of the city, but as someone who has ties and connections to the rural areas of eastern Riverside County to make those known to this body, and as I have to Supervisor Benoit, so that we are cognizant of those issues, and that we have taken a holistic, balanced approach at addressing the issues that have been let known not only by myself here, but also by my colleagues at the AQMD area. So those are my comments, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Park.
Yeah, listening to his statistics sounds like Desert Hot Springs. But I think that the one thing that we all have to understand, the percentages of dollars are determined by the legislation. That 30% environmental justice can and probably will be spent as a result of your RFQs that are submitted to the AQMD. The 30% for close proximity will probably be spent on quality RFQs from that area. The balance, the 40% of the mitigation dollars, I think, are what we're talking about for the trail. So I think that we can all be covered under these mitigation dollars, provided we go to the AQMD hearings, we have our voice heard, and we provide them with quality RFQs, or RFPs, or whatever they're asking for.
Proposals.
Proposals.
No, I appreciate that, and I think, ultimately my concern is that those dollars are allotted to projects or to the trail, and then the remaining dollars may not be sufficient to cover some of the projects that the Eastern Coachella community that comes up with to address some of the quality issues that exist out there. And so I just want to address that, bringing up to this body that we personally, in conversations that I've had with my constituency, is that those dollars be used first for projects that have a mitigated quality in the Eastern Coachella Valley, and then if there is any potentially money left over for those dollars, then the trail is something that I support and I can see myself utilizing, given the disproportionate impacts that we face out in that community. In the conversations that I've had, and I think I wouldn't be doing my job if I wouldn't express my concerns personally, and as well as the concerns of my constituency. So that's something that we advocate for. I know Mr. Benoit is open and has had conversations, and I appreciate the meetings that you had in Desert Hot Springs and in the Eastern Coachella Valley, as well as Mr. Tom Kirk, who's got out to Coachella and done some hearings out there as well, listening to some of those concerns. And I just want to bring that up because I think it's important for this body to know and understand the position of the city of Coachella. So,
Thank you.
I have just a follow-up comment to what I've heard. First of all, I know that we're concerned about the other 40%, but we also have to remember that AQMD is going to take some percentage for their administrative costs, which could go up to 10%, but usually it's not that much. Secondly, I appreciate the fact that some of the money is going to go to the environmental justice areas, but I think that we have to look at the big picture. And the big picture is that this starts at Desert Hot Springs and it goes all the way into the southeast, and that air and the pollutants out of the proposed peaker plant is going to go that whole distance. So I don't know that we can go to just specific areas and specific projects. I believe that we do need a whole approach, such as what's been proposed, that's going to benefit the entire valley and further to the south and east as far as EJ and of course Desert Hot Springs. But I think we finally have a chance to do something big and bold, and we've got, as Supervisor Benoit indicated, the down payment. And if we don't make this attempt now, I don't know that we'll ever have such an opportunity again.
I agree, and before the AQMD, the smaller the project and the smaller the application, kind of gets lost in the minutia, and when you have one project that's driven and supported as a valley as a whole, gives us a stronger chance to get that money and that large sum for a down payment. So those are things we have to take into consideration. But those arguments, and thank you for your comments, are best before the AQMD board, and we were just sharing the project that CVAG Transportation, as you will, and going to executive, is looking at submitting as a regional project. So, thank you, and we'll move on to really commenting on the same thing. So, Mr. Almeida, I got your second request. It's on the same item, and you had longer than the 3 minutes, so I'm going to ask that...
Actually, that was prior to this presentation, so I want to speak to the presentation, not to the issue of AB 1318.
Well, in the meantime, we've got people that need to leave, and my understanding is your responses were on the AB 1318, and is what we were talking about.
I'll just take 1 minute.
And if you do it quickly, if not, I'm going to have to cut you off and move forward. Thank you.
I certainly expect that. Thank you all as well, especially Supervisor Benoit. Thank you for taking a balanced approach with this. You know, certainly I'm not here to sell you a bridge, nor am I going to make a case for saying how that bridge will reduce air pollution between two luxury developments. This legislation is very prescriptive. I think right now what was pointed out that there's no fatal flaws, and I can certainly point out that and bring forth a lot of, I think the Coachella Valley, the Eastern Coachella Valley can bring forth a lot of projects that will not represent fatal flaws. In fact, if money isn't invested in reducing air pollution in some of the worst areas, environmental justice areas, there are fatal consequences to that. You know, and one thing I want to stress to you is that this bill is very prescriptive. There are definitions in state and federal laws and in municipal laws as well that pretty much very specifically say areas with the worst conditions are environment. And Mr. Martinez, you certainly went through that very, very clearly. Those are environmental justice community. Take your worst condition. Yeah, no arguments there. You know, take your worst conditions and put the money there, because that's an environmental justice condition. That's where the 30% should go. So look at the whole Coachella Valley and find those worst conditions from North Shore all the way to the areas that are drawn out on the map, and then decide whether that money is better spent in some, you know, projects that could probably seek funding in other areas, or this money would rightfully go to those environmental justice areas. And to that, and I just want to thank you. I also want to invite you. We are going through a process. We're inviting municipalities, as many interests as can participate. The Loma Linda Unit has been gracious enough to entertain our interest, and I say our, in the community's interest, your interest, in going through a priority ranking process so that your voice is heard, so that the community's voice is heard, Desert Hot Springs is heard, Coachella is heard, so we can go through this priority. What's a priority? And that way you can come up with a good document that has input. I'd like to invite you and have conversations with all these. Thank you. Sorry to more than a minute. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Moving on to item B, Resolution 12-001, approving an application for the Sustainable Communities Planning Grant and Incentives Program.
Mr. Chair, yes, in the